So earlier today, I tweeted out and asked you guys to send me NFL draft hot takes for a video. Well, actually, I didn't ask, come to think of it. I demanded that you send me NFL draft hot takes so that I might make a video for once. And then I see in the comments, oh, you running out of ideas with this one? And yes, I am actually, clearly, because I'm doing this video. But I have done it before. And it's a lot of fun. As we approach the NFL draft, it's kind of fun to go over some of these ideas. You know, you can see some of the hot takes just below me now. Bijan Robinson's on the same tier as Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall. All right, pal. We're not even going to get into that one. But I think it's also a good opportunity to shout out another channel. It's in my listed channels on my main channel. I'm not going to link it down in the description because I don't think that works. If you care about it, if you want to go, you can find it. It's called Big Game Bengal. It's linked on my actual channel in the channels box. And basically what it's going to be is a podcast style channel like this video where we talk about a topic. I don't think the videos are going to be too long. It's not a podcast. It's just kind of sit down and talk about football, whether it's college or NFL, and that's it. I'm not, if I make an XFL video, I might have to hang up cleats at that point. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But basically, long story short, I tweeted out, said, send me your NFL draft hot takes for a video, and boy, did you guys deliver. We're going to start with Calvin. As I should have mentioned if I didn't, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, these are not like, yes, this will happen or no, it won't. Because at the end of the day, we don't know where these players are going to get drafted. Situation, organization matters a lot. You know, almost as much, if not more, than the actual player's talent. Because a lot of these guys, you know, I think the prospect grades, the consensus is usually in a pretty good spot. It just depends on the development to see if someone ends up looking like a genius or an idiot. So per usual with these, we're really more going to be discussing the plausibility rather than whether it's a fact or not, because how would we ever know that at this point? And Calvin brings up a pretty decent point here that Hendon Hooker is the fourth quarterback picked. We really haven't explored this scenario too much. We know that it's going to be most likely Bryce Young and CJ Stroud 1 and 2, depending on the order. We don't exactly know yet. And then Anthony Richardson is kind of the wild card. Will Levis was that guy getting pushed up to the top for a lot of the draft cycle just because, you know, teams were thought to be enamored with his arm and leadership qualities and toughness and all these different things that really don't dive into the accuracy and his issues. But, you know, he's a far from perfect prospect. So is Anthony Richardson. So are pretty much every player in this draft, if not all of them, actually. So, except for Bijan Robinson, of course. Shout out Ricky. But Hendon Hooker could potentially be the fourth quarterback picked. If you view him as more pro-ready than Will Levis, which would be bizarre, I would think, because Hendon Hooker comes from an offense under Josh Heupel at Tennessee that's so far from an NFL offense that he's surely going to need time to develop and learn an NFL scheme. And depending on what team he goes to, he might not be in a position to play even in the near future. So, and as a guy who took a long time to break out too, you know, he's 25 years old right now. You wonder with Hendon Hooker, even though we hear the NFL is high on him, is there really a market for him in the first round? It seems like there is. I keep seeing him getting mocked in the first round to the Vikings, maybe to the Bucks, to the Seahawks late in the first round, you know, a bunch of different scenarios. I don't know. I think it is possible that maybe a Will Levis slide happens and Hendon Hooker goes above him if you like the overall package. But, you know, they're both older prospects. I could see, you could make an argument for Hooker over Levis and vice versa. I'm not exactly enamored with either one of them, although I think Levis probably does have the higher ceiling. I don't know. I could see a scenario where this is true. Here's a real bad one that maybe could end up being true. Welcome to the draft. Kalijah Kancey is better than Jalen Carter, and a lot better than Jalen Carter by the amount of greater than symbols used. I can't even buy this at all. Like, maybe you can make an argument as a sheer pass rusher that Kalijah Kancey is better than Jalen Carter. Speed, finesse up the middle. But Jalen Carter is a great pass rusher for a defensive tackle, for an interior defensive lineman, and is, I would say, go ahead and quadruple the amount of greater than symbols against the run. Kalijah Kancey, you can say, is kind of a non-factor in actually holding the line, whereas Jalen Carter is incredibly strong and overall just a way better prospect. maybe Kalijah Cansey develops into being an awesome pass rusher, and we say the value of that is greater than Jalen Carter just because, we tend to, value pass rushers more than run stoppers, even though at this position, it's incredibly valuable to even hold blocks up. If you can hold 2 offensive linemen on a play, you're being incredibly valuable. You have opportunities for linebackers to shoot gaps, make plays, for the defensive ends if they're not setting the edge to make plays. So I think this is kind of crazy. Not as prospects. There's not even a chance. This one, it really isn't that hot of a take, to be honest. Marvin Mims will be a top 6 wide receiver out of this class. Probably a slot receiver at Oklahoma. If you're not familiar with Marvin Mims, really, really good. Good hands, great route running ability. And I think in an NFL where the slot receiver is, maybe you can say, more utilized than ever, this is an easy sell for me because Marvin Mims is really, really talented. And in a receiver class where it's tough to differentiate wide receiver, 1 or 2 from wide receiver 6 or 7, I don't know that there's that big of a gap as to what we've seen in past years between the first receiver and the 6th or 7th. So to tell me that Marvin Mims could end up being a top 6 receiver, I don't think that's a stretch at all. Yeah, there's a world where he doesn't end up being good. Obviously, it is the transition from college to the pros. But Marvin Mims is incredibly talented, and you could tell me, you could insert any number of names for Marvin Mims, and I could believe you on top 6 receiver out of the class. Jonathan Mingo. You could throw out Parker Washington. You could throw out Xavier Hutchinson. You could throw out, even with all of the variability of outcomes in Kayshon Boutte, you could throw him out there. There's so many different names that actually, in my opinion, fit into top 6 receiver when all is said and done years down the line. To put Marvin Mims in there is not crazy at all. I'll be honest, this one is an uphill battle from Blue Guy. He says that Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to end up being the best quarterback of the draft, which sounds insane for a guy that may go as high as late day 2, and that's absolute best case scenario for him. Probably goes more day 3 to the undrafted section, but I like DTR. He's got a big-time arm. He's a really good athlete, and, a similar argument that you're seeing at the top of the draft for some of these really high upside quarterbacks, you can make with DTR. Now, the accuracy is spotty at times, and that is a big problem. I think he's less accurate than Anthony Richardson, and I know a lot of people think Anthony Richardson can't throw, period, but I don't think you've actually watched him, as we've talked about a number of times. But DTR is one of these really high upside guys where, if you liked what Jalen Hurts did this past season, you could see DTR in a similar type of development. And he's got a better arm than Hurts, although Hurts, I think, has been safer with the football. Obviously, last season, Jalen Hurts was an animal. But this was a guy who was not an amazing prospect. Looked like he went pretty high when he went at number 50 overall or around there to the Eagles a couple years back. Wasn't really great as a starter initially, and then kept getting better. And then this past year for the Eagles, it was a really run-heavy, awesome offense for him to perform in. But he really developed as a passer. He was awesome this past season. And there is a world where I think a guy like DTR has some tools that you can develop and see him blossoming. It is a long shot, by the way. It's a long shot because quarterback is such a tough position to get chances and to perform in. But DTR's got some tools. I'm not saying this is absolutely insane. I'm trying to subdue it a little bit because I do like DTR as a prospect a lot for a mid to late round quarterback. But it is a long shot for any quarterback to work out, let alone one that's not going to go very high. I think this is one we should at least talk about. I know Lance Zierlein has floated the idea that if Bryce Young is not there at 2, the Texans will look elsewhere. And STC Precise says if Bryce Young goes at 1, which he will, as that's like maybe a hot take on itself, but I think that is plausible at the very least. Very, very possible. The Texans will trade back with the Colts, and the Colts will select CJ Stroud. So this is a multiple part thing. First of all, you're saying Bryce Young is going to go at 1, which certainly could. And then the Texans will trade back. I'm not sure if they would necessarily trade back to 4, because there's a scenario where maybe they like Anthony Richardson. Maybe they like CJ Stroud. Maybe they just opt to go with best defensive player available and see if either a quarterback slides to 12 or you can trade back up. I think they really want Bryce Young at 2, but if he's not there, what is your backup plan? You got to have one. And maybe it's Maybe it's trade down, although I find it really unlikely that they would trade down with a division rival to give them a quarterback. I think that's not going to happen. But the idea in general that they might trade back with somebody, I don't think is super far-fetched if Bryce Young's off the board, which there's a potential he will be. Although I still think it likely will be Texans stick and pick and take a QB at 2. You never know. Things could change. But if Bryce Young's not there, throw a wrinkle into things. I'm seeing this more and more and more that Will Anderson Jr. will be the second edge off the board, and that's going to be behind Tyree Wilson is the common thought. This could happen. I think I've done this in maybe one mock draft all time on the channel. Maybe 2. I think at least 1. There is a chance that this happens. There are some knocks on Anderson. His get-off isn't elite, even though he's a good athlete overall. His size is not elite. Unfortunately, he's only about 245 pounds. He's played, I know he was at the comment at like 253, bulked up. Still decently athletic. The thing that you love about Will Anderson Jr., though, is the level of production in the SEC. And a lot of times you hear with these NFL teams lately, it's not about production, which I wholeheartedly agree with. You got to take in everything. That's athletic profile, that's size, that's length, especially at edge, which is going to be arm length. So important to get your hands on the offensive lineman early. You're able to control their arms. You're able to get to the quarterback. If you're going to be rushing like that, is there a certain number of moves where you don't actually really use your arms? You flash hands, duck underneath. That's a ghost move, for example. But that's set up from engaging earlier. So length is important, is what I'm saying, even if that was not in the clearest way. But what does Tyree Wilson have? An abundance of length. Really, really, really long arms. There is a way where you can see him going real early in the draft, and maybe even ahead of Anderson. If you're a GM like Trent Baalke, for example, and not that they would do this, they're not in a position to do this, but Trayvon Walker goes at number 1 overall last year, and length played a pretty big part in that. Really values the long arms pass rushers, which I can't blame him. But Tyree Wilson is not quite on the same level of athlete that Trayvon Walker was. Doesn't move as well in space. He's not the same type of dynamic player. However, if you're a GM like Baalke that really values the size and the length, you're in a 4-3 defense, yeah, Tyree Wilson probably makes more sense for you than a 3-4 outside rush linebacker in Will Anderson Jr., who's significantly smaller, that maybe just doesn't fit your system quite as well. I think this could happen. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I'm going to go in on it again very quickly. Hendon Hooker is a safer prospect than Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. It's just not true. It is not true, in my opinion. He is 25, maybe going to be 26 years old by the time he takes his first NFL snap. Played in a complete anomaly in terms of offensive structure. You will never see it in the NFL. Took until age 24 or 25 to break out in college football. Was at Virginia for a while. He is not a safe prospect at all. Maybe safer than Will Levis or Anthony Richardson because you think those are complete outliers in terms of whether they're actually going to be good or not in the NFL because they don't have the passing numbers in college. So I could see why you might think that from a stat perspective, which again, I just don't care about. I do not think Hendon Hooker is a safe prospect. He might have all the mental ability and aptitude to be a great NFL quarterback. Teams apparently have spoken really highly on Hendon Hooker in that regard, but to say he's a safe prospect is not true. There are so many question marks with him. Chris Moose Burner says Cam Smith is CB2. He's dropping in mocks, and I don't understand why. I can't agree with this because I think Devin Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez are pretty clearly the top 2 corners in a very, very good corner class. The thing with Cam Smith, and I watched him in 2021, and I was really impressed. I like Cam Smith a lot. 2022, I don't think was quite as good. He just is not quite as sticky as you would want for a guy that's pretty handsy. And for Cam Smith, I don't think it's that he's a bad prospect. It's just that there are other really, really good cornerback prospects. And when you look at all the guys that are probably going to go within the top 50 picks, and that's Deonte Banks, that's Joey Porter Jr., that is potentially DJ Turner and maybe Tyreek Stevenson and maybe Julius Brents. And I mean, I could go on and on and on. Clark Phillips maybe as a, undersized slot, but very talented corner. There are so many good corners in this class that it's tough to get them all in the first round or even into the second round. And for Cam Smith, he is just unfortunately, it did not quite perform as well as you would have wanted in 2022 to be, CB1 or CB2, especially when Devin Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez were so good. I mean, I tweeted out months ago, I didn't understand why Devin Witherspoon wasn't getting more hype. You watch this guy play, he's unbelievable. And lo and behold, here he is as going top 10 or top 15 or 16 in every single mock draft that comes out there. Devin Witherspoon is really, really good, and Christian Gonzalez is on that same level as a prospect, maybe the best cover skills in the draft, has the length that you want at the position, has the athleticism. Cam Smith just not quite in that same range. It's Dom. YouTube says the Patriots will draft a wide receiver in the first round and he won't bust. Don't you want your receivers to bust long plays, take you to the end zone? Weird. This one's a tough one from Backdeck Sports, as Kayshon Boutte is the most overhated, not overrated, overhated prospect in the class. This one's tough because while I like to agree with you based on what we've seen from Kayshon in the past, 2022 Boutte is very bad, and you don't really know what you're getting with him, unfortunately. There were weird issues at LSU. The hands are a legitimate concern. We don't know if he's going to be much more than a slot receiver. Yeah, there's a Kayshon Boutte that went off for 300-plus yards, set an SEC receiving record in a game. He's so great after the catch historically, but you don't know what you're getting. You don't know about the consistency of his play at all. So I don't think he's overhated. I think there is talent there. It's just a question of whether you're actually going to unlock that or not. Is this going to be a guy that everyone calls a steal, who's a dominant NFL receiver for 5 to 10 years? Or is it a guy that's out of the league within 2 or 3 because he could never quite put it all together? He has, again, a lot of question marks. I don't think you can call him overhated because there are real, true, legitimate concerns about his NFL longevity. This one's a fun one from RBT. Says, if the Titans draft Darnell Washington, tight end out of Georgia, Derrick Henry goes for 2,000 next season. Now, I think we're to the point of the offseason where I think we know Derrick Henry's going to stay a Titan. Maybe something happens in the draft to shake that up, but it seems like they're not going to be trading him like the rumors may have suggested. But also, even though Darnell Washington's a fantastic run-blocking tight end, he didn't play right guard. He doesn't play right tackle. You got legitimate holes on this offensive line. He doesn't even play left tackle. Taylor Lewan cut. So this offensive line could look completely different, and I think a lot of the reason that Derrick Henry was successful, even though this offensive line wasn't a great pass-protecting unit, every time you watched them, they were clearing lanes for Derrick Henry. And he's a guy who needs a runway to get going. His short area quickness is not very good. However, he's a guy who, once he gets going, he's got tremendous vision, tremendous power, and tremendous long speed. So I think the issues across the offensive line, I don't know if a tight end is going to put a 28 or 29-year-old running back on the course to 2,000 in a league where we pass the ball more than ever. I know not the Titans, but it's a tough situation. He's got to stay healthy as an aging running back with a lot of tread on the tires behind a questionable offensive line, and I don't know. It's a tough sell. The current Titans offensive line, they signed Andre Dillard, who is a draft bust up to this point. He's listed as left tackle on the ESPN depth chart. That's unofficial, keep in mind. Daniel Brunskill at left guard. Aaron Brewer at center. Dylan Radun's playing right guard. A former tackle, has had some guard experience in the league. And then Nicholas Petit-Frere, who is an interesting, intriguing kind of prospect on the offensive line. Maybe this is not exactly a dominant unit, though, is kind of to my point. Jackson Taylor says Quentin Johnston will be the first TCU receiver to completely pan out in the NFL. And this one's a tough one as well. TCU kind of looking like receiver bust university, as if that matters. Got the player, not the helmet. But between Josh Doxson and Jalen Reagor, you might have reason to doubt Quentin Johnston. However, there are actual legitimate reasons to doubt him as well. The hands are not very good. He is a big body catcher. He doesn't really play quite as big as you'd want. It's easy to look at a receiver and say, man, this guy's You know, 6'3.5", 6'4", with excellent speed, great quickness for his size. And this is going to be a stud. He's really good after the catch. However, Quentin Johnston is just not that refined as a true receiver, and the body catchers in the NFL don't typically work out. He had a lot of question marks. He's not a clean prospect. You know, I know that I think like the PFF big board still has him as a top 15 player. He gets drafted at every mock draft in the top 15. And from everything that I've seen and heard, that he's probably maybe the most polarizing receiver in this draft, who could go as early as that range or fall out of the first round entirely despite being a great athlete. I don't know. This one's a tough one. I wouldn't bet on it here. Obviously, it could end up being a stud. We don't know, but I wouldn't bet on it. Hayden from Underdog says that CJ Stroud leads the Panthers to the playoffs as a rookie and wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. This is an interesting one because you look at the Panthers, if they were to draft CJ Stroud, that's the first hurdle of this one to get over, which seems like it's quite possible. They have the number 1 overall pick. They could take anybody. They could take Stetson Bennett at 1 if they wanted to, which I'd be surprised by, admittedly. But Stroud leads the Panthers to the playoffs as a rookie plus Offensive Rookie of the Year. You look at the Panthers on paper, Stroud would start right away at quarterback, you'd like to think. You lose Sam Darnold, who was going to compete there. Matt Corral, we've never seen play a snap in the NFL. You know, what do they really have at quarterback? CJ Stroud probably would be the day 1 starter. You look at the talent around him, there are pieces. The offensive line, I like the offensive line. I think receiver is in a tough spot. I like Terrace Marshall. Hoping Terrace Marshall takes the next step. I haven't really exactly seen that yet. Then you have Shi Smith. You lose DJ Moore. I mean, Offensive Rookie of the Year is like a given if you start at quarterback as a rookie. But I think it's not a tough sell exactly, but I'm not sure that they are quite there yet. We could play devil's advocate all day. Like I could say, oh, Adam Thielen's aging. He's not the player he used to be. He's not going to be a contributor in Carolina. Laviska Shenault. He's a draft what could have been. Shi Smith can't catch the ball. DJ Chark has seen better days. Injuries have really gotten the best of him. But there's also a scenario where those guys are contributors and they stay healthy and they produce. And they're important pieces on a Panthers team. You know, Hayden Hurst is an interesting pickup for them. Miles Sanders take a little bit of the pressure off CJ Stroud. There's talent on that team. I just wonder, like, what that true talent level is. Because I said a lot of good players. I don't know if we'd say any of those players are great. Any of those players are enough to really help out a rookie quarterback like CJ Stroud. There is potential for this, obviously. But again, I don't think they're quite there yet. I could buy or sell this one. I think this one's 50-50. And I suppose it wouldn't be one of these videos if we didn't get a That Franchise Guy opinion in here. And he's a man after my own heart. Bijan Robinson is the most underrated player in this draft. He's typically dismissed as really good, but just another running back, he's not. Should be viewed as an outlier to the rule and a potential top 10 pick. I know the NFL has changed in recent years, obviously. Probably not going to see Ezekiel Elliott or Leonard Fournette go top 5 again, you know, those type of guys. But I do agree that Bijan Robinson is different to pretty much any running back prospect we've seen. And I think not only is he a willing blocker, that's a plus, not every running back is. Not only is he an exceptional receiver for a running back, which he very much is, he's also a pure bell cow running back in terms of size, athleticism, vision. Bijan, the most impressive thing he does to me when you watch him is it's not the ability to bust 40, 50, 60-yard runs. That's tough to do, and maybe not so in the Big 12, but that's tough to do in the NFL. The most impressive thing that Bijan does is turn these would-be losses or 1 to 2 yard gains into 8 or 9 yard runs. That's the type of thing that turns, you know, an NFL running back into an NFL running back great. And, you know, you talk about the upside that comes with that. I've seen some people say Bijan's a, you know, lock Hall of Famer. It's way too early to say that about any prospect, obviously. But I think as far as prospects go in this draft, you will not find a cleaner one than Bijan Robinson in terms of flaws. There really are not many with him as a player. And as a person, very highly valued as well. I am on board for taking a running back in the first round. I've said this before. I don't know if you'd take one at 2, like Saquon Barkley behind me, because that's tough. You'd like to trade down and get more value if possible, although he was going to go high in that draft no matter what. But I am on board for taking a running back in the first round because you get the 5th-year option. You get them on a cheaper contract. And then if you draft a running back, let's say it's an older running back prospect at 23 years old. You get them for, we'll say, age 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. So that is their entire prime on a rookie contract. Now, the issue becomes when you go to extending that player. Would the Cowboys take Zeke in the top 5 again? I think they would. I think they really would. He was a really good player for them for that first contract. The issue comes with extending that player when you get them for age 27, 28, 29, 30, and beyond. That is a problem because those players at running back don't typically age very well. It's very rare to find a running back close to 30 that is a still really good running back. It is a complete anomaly. It happens, but it's rare. So I'm on board for drafting a running back high. If I'm Chicago, and I know they brought in Deontay Foreman, but if I'm Chicago and I think that we really want to establish the run, we want to build a run-first offense, and yet, like, the offensive line remains in need. But, you know, could you sell me on Bijan Robinson at 9? You absolutely could. And I know that's going to seem like a stretch for the value isn't there. They're replaceable. You can find them down the board. Yeah, you can sometimes, but they're not going to be a prospect like Bijan Robinson. Like, you could just as easily take, you know, Keyshawn Vaughn in the 3rd round as you could Alvin Kamara. Like, there are the guys that are complete outliers, Kareem Hunt, Alvin Kamara, maybe not complete outliers, but it's really not as easy as it sounds to just find those guys and they're going to be productive and good. And oftentimes they're one-dimensional. You get a 3-dimensional running back like Bijan that can run, pass block, and catch. It's a complete rarity. It really, really is. I would take him pretty high. I don't think he's another running back. I completely agree with Marcus here. Would I take him in the top 5? I think those would probably be better served on more valuable positions, offensive line, defensive line, quarterback. But if you're a team like the Eagles who won't take Bijan at 10 more than likely, would I do it? I probably would. And it's a good thing I know that I'm not calling the shots. That's why I'm making YouTube videos, right? But I think this guy is, if you're a team that's close and you want the cherry on top of the sundae, why not Bijan Robinson? If I were the Eagles, I would absolutely do it. You have a great defense. You have a great offense. Lose Miles Sanders. I know you bring in Rashad Penny on a 1-year deal, but why not take Bijan Robinson? You have 2 first-round picks. You have a multitude of high picks and talent on the roster. I know you need offensive line help and maybe defensive line for the future because that's just what Howie Roseman does. But if I were the Eagles, I would take Bijan Robinson all day. And I hope, as a Giants fan and a Texas Longhorns fan, that does not happen. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Check out the Big Game Bengal channel, linked on my channel in the channels box if you're interested in videos like this. But it's more so going to be like one topic, talk about it for 5 to 10 minutes, and get you on your day. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.